Good morning. I'm from East Fishkill in Dutchess County. And if you turn on a Yankee game at night in Dutchess County, by the third inning, you've been bombarded with at least a dozen startup New York is open for business commercials. But Dutchess County has created 0 startup New York jobs. The following counties have created 0 startup New York jobs: Greene County, Columbia County, Orange County, Sullivan County, Delaware County, Rockland County, Westchester County, Bronx County, New York County, Richmond County, and Queens County. 0 startup New York jobs, despite the ubiquitous commercials, despite the tens of millions of tax dollars spent on those commercials. 0 jobs. In fact, from Albany to Brooklyn, startup New York successes are 44 jobs pledged from Albany to Brooklyn over the next 5 years. Those are the return on investment that we've gotten so far. It's quite incredible. This is a town where cronyism is a major problem. You can ask the U.S. Attorney, he'll tell you that. And when Startup New York passed, many of us predicted it's going to lead to cronyism. If you allow people in Albany to pick winners and losers, corruption is going to occur. And we know right here in this city, some of the Startup New York designated properties connected with SUNY Albany have gone to SUNY Albany insiders. Not a fair shot for an outside business who doesn't have connections in this town. In the last several months, since the awful returns on Startup New York have become clear to everyone, the Working Families Party has come out for repeal of the Startup New York program and savings of those monies. The Conservative Party, the Democrat comptroller of the state, has questioned it. Newspaper reporters have questioned it. And one reporter from Cranes, New York, Greg David, realized Startup New York isn't a new, innovative, bold program as the governor advertised it as 2 years ago. It's actually a rehashed, failed 1990s Clinton-era policy of empowerment zones that were run by HUD with Andrew Cuomo at the helm, that led to cronyism, became a patronage mill, and did very little to create jobs. So we've learned our lessons here in New York. We should have learned them at the federal level. There's bipartisan opposition. We are #1 in the nation out of the 50 states in corporate welfare and cronyism, but we are last in business climate. We spend 5 times more on corporate welfare programs like Startup New York than any other state, yet our unemployment rate is higher than the national average, and our growth rate is slower than the national average. If those aren't reasons to repeal this program and put those savings into across-the-board tax cuts, I don't know what is. The administration's goal for Startup New York is 2,500 jobs, and the cap is 10,000 jobs. So even if everything went perfectly and they quadrupled their goal and got to the cap of 10,000 new private sector jobs through Startup New York, that's 1/10 of all the private sector jobs in the state of New York. It's a drop in the bucket. So even if it worked exactly as planned, it would still be a drop in the bucket, yet we would have spent gallons and gallons and gallons of tax dollars to get to that very, very, very modest goal.
Can you give specific examples of cronyism in the designation of, startup tax-free status in the classic sense of cronyism, which is benefiting one's political supporters? Is there anything like that here?
Well, I was the one who mentioned SUNY Albany. And
what specifically? What companies are
okay, so I sent out a release on that last summer. Nobody picked up on it, but I will resend it out today, which has it chapter and verse, names, and their associations. But one of the political aspects, because you mentioned the political connection, is if we're looking for 2,500 jobs to come to New York from somewhere else, or for New York companies to grow here, why are we using the mass media of television, the most expensive media there is? Most of us don't use television in our campaign ads. Why are we using the most expensive form of advertising when really we are looking for 10, 20 CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, Inc. 1000 companies, or new companies? Why would we use that method? Other than the politics of an election year to change the perception. The administration admitted that it was about changing the perception, nothing about the reality. We need to go in this room and the room down the hall to change the reality, but to change the perception of New York State during an election year and now thereafter. If you really wanted to bring in 20 CEOs and new companies, you'd have a team put together, you'd give them some kind of a financial incentive for landing the business, you'd pay for their food and their hotels and their travel and some printed materials, and you could do it for a fraction of what we're paying for the mass market television ads that serve no one but the governor's ambitions. And it's bad enough when there are political commercials paid for by campaign donors that mislead the public, but here we are taking money out of taxpayers' pockets, giving it to advertisers to mislead the very people who are paying for this advertising and this boondoggle. Millions of dollars, 76 jobs, $600K per job. So that's, I think, the political aspect of this.